Hi, Kirsten. Welcome on O Rendezvous. How are you doing
Uh,
today?
I'm very well. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited. Thank you.
I'm excited too because you're a psychological thriller author, and I would really like to know tips to how to write a psychological thriller, especially because you're a clinical psychologist as well, and have very much interest in psychology. So, how did you begin your journey as a clinical psychologist? And is your book inspired by your real life or some patients that you have come
Yeah.
across through your 20-year career? Like, could you just give us a gist of it?
Oh, wow. Good question. Well, I've been a clinical psychologist for 23 years now. And I've always known that I wanted to be a psychologist. And I did my clinical PhD on psychopathy. And so I think I dived straight in the deep end with clinical psychology, which is great. And yeah, I love psychological crime. I really enjoy, I grew up on Agatha Christie and
Yes.
I really enjoy crime fiction. Yeah. So I love writing. I've written 10 other books that are non-fiction psychology books, but I really love writing fiction. And this idea for this book just came into my mind. And so I didn't plan to write it. It just came into my mind. Yeah.
So it's a trilogy, it's a three-part, and this is the first book that is coming out.
Yes, it's a 6 book series with the same protagonist called Margot Gray, and she's a clinical psychologist, big surprise. And they're all different, completely different books, very, very different, but with the same protagonist. This first book is called Murder at the Narcissus Gardening Club. And you asked whether it comes from real life, and it does. I've had all of my clinical experience and also personal experience with people with narcissism. And so it's delving into narcissism in a playful way, but also in a very real and a very dark way. And it's basically exploring the different expressions of narcissism. And it's sort of, if you step back and look at patterns, they start to become quite absurd, quite ridiculous. And it's really looking at it from that perspective. So I hope when people read it, it's going to be really quite intriguing to get into the heads of people with narcissism, and also to get a perspective on how to not get so damaged by them. Yeah, and in amongst it, there's also characters that don't have narcissism, obviously, and there's a crime fiction in there, and it's all about people's agendas and all this intricacy of black backstory, and it's a very, very character-driven book. It was a lot of fun to write.
Yeah, I can imagine. I wanted to ask what is the real definition of narcissism because sometimes it's confused with gaslighting. So, is there any difference? Like, if you could, as a clinical psychologist, what is the exact? How can
Yeah.
we identify a narcissist?
Yeah, absolutely. So narcissistic personality disorder is a personality disorder. And in psychology, there's other disorders, but then there's the personality disorders. So that's a subgroup. And it's when there's a clear and consistent pattern of behavior where the person doesn't have, they're not only very self-absorbed and they don't have insight, they don't have empathy or remorse for their behaviors. But there's more to that. They're very manipulative. They're very clever in trying uh, to manipulate people to have their outcome and to be very controlling and to undermine the other person's voice and their confidence. So gaslighting is one of the skills they use. And gaslighting is obviously when I might say to you, the sky's green. Of course it's green. What are you talking about? You're such an idiot.
Yeah.
And you confuse the person's reality. So that's one of the manipulative skills. So people who don't have narcissism, they can do gaslighting as well. But it very much is the terrain of people with narcissism. Yeah, it's a very interesting field, sadly.
Yeah, especially nowadays, like online, you have all these bullies, like trolls. So, are they narcissists or are they like something else in psychological terms? Are they projecting their own insecurities on others when they come and troll people?
Yeah, well, we can have some people that don't have a personality disorder, but they're just mean or they're just bad people in their behavior. So that might be that they've got some habits where they cut other people down so they feel better about themselves. They might have come from a background where they're just all very critical and harsh, and they don't really know how to be mindful of the impact on others. So there are definitely people that are not kind people, and they're cruel in their behavior, but it doesn't mean that they have narcissism. It's there is definitely an overlap though. There's no question there.
Yeah.
It's complicated. It's definitely complicated. You can have people that don't have a personality disorder, but they are just behaving badly, and they can be mean and they can be selfish. That's probably the best way to summarize it. Yeah, but they don't have the same. Someone with narcissism, they don't have a they don't really have a authentic, healthy side. They're just always performing and approaching the person based on what they want. It's a different quality. Yeah.
What I wanted to ask is narcissism picked up from parents? Or sometimes the parents might be mentally stable, they might be really nice and loving, and that the child turns out to be a narcissist. So how does that happen? Like,
Well, there's a lot of debate on the nature and nurture, where it comes from for narcissism. Basically, it's understood to be a combination of both, and we really don't know. We have some families where the parents are just very adoring, beautiful parents, and then we have a child come through with these personality traits. But we also have got family history where you can see narcissistic personality disorder throughout the family. So it is nature and nurture. I would love to be around in 50 or 100 years' time and be here for when we actually figure it out, because we can only really observe patterns at this stage. But I can tell you this, a child who has these traits would need to have exceptional parenting to give them boundaries so that their better choices are reinforced, and the less empathic choices aren't able to run right. So you'd need phenomenal parenting if you did have a child with these traits, that's for sure.
so coming back to the book, which is a favorite character from the book?
Okay, I love the protagonist. Her name's Margot Gray, and I created her because I would love to meet her. She is just, she's incredibly intelligent, incredibly intuitive. She can pick up, nuances in the room that other people can't. But she's also really in her own world, doing her own thing, and she can be quite abrasive towards people. She can be quite irritating. She's quite messy, and she's just like a bull at a gate, really. But she can also pull it back and be quite subtle and mindful in her approach to people. So she can be quite manipulative herself because she's that clever. Yeah, she's a big personality, and she has a sidekick called William Tarlington, and he's the opposite to her. He's a very conservative person who's quite anxious, comes across as being very capable and, having that authority because he's a policeman. But in truth, he's just a nervous wreck. And, they've got a really close bond, and there's a bit of love and hate between them, really. No, a lot of love, just a lot of irritation.
Something like
So I really,
Sherlock. Something like
pardon?
Sherlock. I was
I
saying
missed it.
like Sherlock, Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of the crime fiction, they definitely do. I mean, look at Poirot with Agatha Christie, and then, he's got his Hastings.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I definitely love the play between them. And I often write the books from William Tarlington's perspective. And so that's also really fun. Yeah. But Margot Gray, love to meet her.
So, as a writer, psychological writer specifically, what are the tips that you would give to the audience or listeners who are potentially going to write a psychological thriller?
Okay, well, they say within writing, I love this analogy, that you can either be an architect or a gardener. So an architect is someone who plans the book out with great detail and then they write the book, whereas a gardener is someone who starts writing and they kind of work it through as they're writing, and it's a very explorative process. So I'm an architect, and for me, my approach is to have everything really detailed, really laid out, to know what's going to be happening through the chapters. So I find that that structure helps me to keep the momentum with writing, and also to be very mindful with all the information that I'm including, but at the same time being very flexible with new ideas or something that's not working or gaps that need to be filled. So I like that structure. But I think the second big tip is just get the first draft written, just get it out and create some time where you have structured time where you sit down and write, so that if you do a certain amount of time every day, you're going to get that first draft out. Because I think a lot of people start writing and they get halfway or 3/4 and they stop. And they have an unfinished manuscript, which would be so frustrating. So yeah, that's what I think's my best tips I would come across. Yeah.
Okay. So according to you, why do people get interested in psychological thrillers or murder mysteries, murder podcasts? And nowadays we have Netflix and all these major channels. They are picking up all kind of mysteries and thrillers and all psychological thrillers. Why is that? Like, why people are? Of course, there is violence, then there is like murder, and it's human complex like kind of thing. So why is it that people really enjoy watching such things?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of us really enjoy the puzzle, and that they're watching or they're reading and they're wondering what happened, what's going to happen, and they're trying to work out the answers. And I think it's very nourishing for the brain that enjoys a puzzle. I think that people enjoy the complexity of the characters. You know, you need to have a lot of complexity in there. I wonder if I don't like watching violent things at all. I much more prefer the sophistication of the psychological side. But some people really enjoy violence and big dramatic situations. I wonder if it's because they find it stimulating, because they I don't know, maybe they just enjoy the drama in their life. Personally, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I live in drama every day. I have clients who bring crises to me every day, every hour. So I don't actually enjoy watching high pressure, high stress
Yes.
things myself at all. I much prefer the sophistication of character-driven pieces. But yeah, I don't know. Everyone's different. Do you think any of that might make sense?
I feel like they might see a glimpse of themselves in sometimes in the characters that are played on screen, or maybe the book that they read. So is it like could be the parallel between that fiction and real life kind of thing?
I think that's really interesting. I mean, whenever we have new material, a new character, we do always look at it and try to see whether we relate or not, for sure. It's interesting. Yeah.
Like your main character, you would like to meet her. Maybe there is someone out there who might read the book and she is like that in real life. Like she could,
Ah,
or maybe relate to the character in the book. So it could happen, I feel that way.
absolutely. I think that Margot Gray is an amalgamation of different people that I've met, and it's bringing them all together into one character. And when I meet these people, they're just so full of life. You know, they come into the room and they create the energy, and everyone's intrigued by them and a little bit scared of them. And I really enjoy those characters. They just don't care about society's limitations. They're just dancing to their own beat. And I think that's really inspiring and refreshing.
Yeah. So I would like to ask, how do you deal with a narcissist? Like,
Yeah, well, I think the first, I often say this, I think the population's divided into three groups. There's people who have never had any exposure to people with narcissism. Then there's the middle group, and they're the ones that are currently in a relationship with someone with narcissism, whether it be a romantic relationship, a friendship, a workplace, or a family, and they're currently in the storm. And then there's the third group, and they're the ones that have come out of that relationship, and they have boundaries and they have some scars from that, but they're also streetwise and they understand what it's all about. And they're the only ones that truly know. So I think the punchline out of that is, when you're in the storm, if you're in that middle group, boundaries. You can't get that person to want to be constructive in a conversation, or to be mindful of you, or to have remorse for doing harm to you. all you can do is have boundaries so that they can't get to you, they can't access you, and you can make yourself safe. So boundaries is the answer, whether that means getting out of the relationship or only having contact with them in certain circumstances where you have got more control. For example, if there's a family member, you might meet them at a social event, but you would never be in a car with them on the way there because you don't have control of your safety. So yeah, boundaries is 100% the key. No question there.
Thank you. So before we can wrap up, how do people contact you? Do you have your social accounts? And could you give us a little gist of the story before we can wrap it up? Like not the whole thing, but maybe just a hint what is going to happen in the plot, you know?
I would love to. I would love to. Okay, so first of all, just while I'm at it, the book's available online as of the 10th of. Actually, I think we've just launched it because it's just won an award in Australia. One on the Goodreads book. No, Australian book club. I don't know. It's just won something in Australia, so we had to quickly launch it. So it's available on all online bookstores platforms. As for socials, I have Facebook and Instagram predominantly, Kirsten Hunter Author. I also have a website, kirstenhunterauthor.com, and that has all sorts of psychology resources. It's got my other 10 books on there, and obviously talks about this book, Murder at the Narcissus Gardening Club. But as for the plot, basically what we have is we have a group of people that come together for this narcissist Murder at the Narcissus Gardening Club. Narcissism, no, my brain. Murder at the Narcissus Gardening Club. So it's called the Narcissus Gardening Club. And the narcissist, people think it's the members, and it accidentally is. But it's actually named after the daffodil, the Narcissus daffodil. And so this group of people come together and they're in crisis, and there's all of this information and storyline where they're interlinked, but they don't know it, or the reader doesn't know it. And it's about understanding how they're all linked and why they're truly there, because they're not there for gardening at all. And it's written from the perspective of Anne, and Anne is there on the precipice of breaking up with her husband because he's not a good person. So it's just at that point of crisis when the book starts. And so obviously Margot Gray and William Tarlington, they turn up as well. And it's a bit of a mess. It all goes wrong. There's a murder. And it's really an intricate unveiling of all this information. So yeah, I would like to have gone that night to the gardening club.
So are you in the process of writing the second one, or it's already done? Like,
yeah, the second book is called Mystery of Placid House. It's actually already written and it's been released in August this year. And then I've got 4 more books, and they're being released 1 per year. I've already written the first 4 books.
okay.
So the third book is called The San Sebastian Passenger. It's set in San Sebastian. My husband's from Basque in Spain, so it's set over there. The 4th book is called April. And so I've yet to write the last 2 books, which are called Dead Letters and Ball Macabre. So I've got 2 more books to write. Yeah, it's fun. I love it.
Fun. Yeah, it sounds very interesting. I'm looking forward to reading your books.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine, for being with us today on Au Rendezvous and talking through your psychological and clinical experience and about your books. Thank you for coming on my show.
Thank you for having me. Absolute pleasure. Thank you. See you later.